What Trump knew about that reimbursement system and when he knew it will also be central to the case, which is what makes these less recognizable names also very interesting. Jeffrey McConney and Madeleine Westerhout. McConney was the former controller for the Trump Organization. He would have had access and maybe even needed to approve the payments to Michael Cohen, which were all classified as payments for legal services. Westerhout was Trump's Oval Office secretary during the period when Cohen was being reimbursed by Trump. And because Trump was doing all of this reimbursing while he was in the White House as the president, she would have had a front row seat. And that's not even the whole potential witness list. Joining me now to discuss are MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and Ankush Khardori, a former federal prosecutor and current senior writer at Politico magazine. Thank you both for being here. Lisa, I was very interested in this potential witness list, and I'm sure you were even more interested and more informed, given your sort of following of this case and your deep legal expertise. Who among those names stuck out to you as being sort of essential to the prosecution's case here?
People are going to be talking when this trial gets underway about Madeleine Westerhout. And that's because when Donald Trump engaged in his repayment of Michael Cohen, there were multiple checks sent to Cohen. He didn't repay him in one lump sum. He repaid him over a series of months. 6 of the checks, at least, that were sent to Michael Cohen were signed by Donald J. Trump in his distinctive Sharpie scrawl.
Yes.
And at a time when he was president of the United States. So you have to ask yourself, where was Donald Trump when he signed those checks? And does he have a checkbook in the Resolute desk? No. The way that they are formulated, you can see they are computerized. They were generated from some business. Somebody had to have presented him with those checks to sign. And that's where Madeleine Westerhout comes in. She was also, as Bob Woodward says, Trump's gatekeeper. She was the key. If you wanted to communicate with Trump, you had to go through her. So expect the prosecution potentially to show her other evidence of the scheme to conceal the payments through these manufactured legal invoices. Because if someone wanted to send Trump an email, we know Trump doesn't email.
Yep.
Someone wanted to send him a text, we know he doesn't text. And if they wanted to call him, who would have placed that call? The Oval Office secretary, Alex.
So fascinating. Ankush, you have made a point in Politico, and I think it's well taken, especially for those of us on the outside of the legal profession, that Michael Cohen is more of a problematic witness than I think perhaps the layman understands. Can you elaborate on what you think his greatest weaknesses are and whether any of them are shored up by the witness list that we have seen today?
Yeah, so it's not unusual for cooperators in prominent criminal cases to have sordid pasts, their own criminal history. Maybe they lied to prosecutors, but now they've sort of seen the light. And they stop lying once they start working with the government and ideally are sort of on the right path, on the straight and narrow. Michael Cohen has lied to every branch of the federal government over the last few years. He lied to Justice Department prosecutors when he was trying to ask them to give him a break after he pled guilty in the Southern District of New York. He lied to Congress, and he admitted to lying to Congress and pled guilty to doing that. And he lied to at least one judge, probably the judge who took his guilty plea on the tax charges back in 2018, because he has since claimed that he pled guilty under duress and that he didn't mean it. He didn't commit those crimes. So that's a lot of lying for someone who's going to be a key witness. And Cohen also has a couple of other elements of sort of unusual baggage. I mean, he has a career now, a media career, that he has constructed off the back of his connection to Donald Trump and, frankly, his vendetta against Donald Trump. Both of those things are going to be issues for his credibility that I'm sure Trump's lawyers will bring out. But, Lisa is exactly right. I mean, the other witnesses on this list could be quite significant, and I'm sure the DA's office will be looking to them to try to shore up Cohen's testimony, corroborate it, or plug in gaps. The most obvious, for instance, just with the assistant that Lisa was talking about, is, she may have been around conversations in which he could have overheard Trump talking about his knowledge of the scheme, his motive, that sort of thing. And I don't want to speculate too far, but that's sort of what we're seeing with this witness list. So the DA's office perhaps putting some people on the sort of board who might be able to fill in pieces of evidence that other people might not be able to do so well.
Plugging the holes, Lisa.
Well, when Ankush was talking about the assistant, and it reminded me that in the statement of facts that accompanies the indictment, there is a single paragraph that jumps out at me every time I read it. And it's about the fact that in 2017, Cohen and Trump allegedly met in the Oval Office to cement this repayment scheme. And I have been thinking to myself for months, who is going to corroborate that? If Michael Cohen is a problematic witness, as Ankush has just postulated, who's going to be that person? Well, we now have one possibility, that it's Madeleine Westerhout, because there's no one else on that witness list who would have been in the White House at that time.
Ankush, I do wonder, you know, as much as it seems quite evident that DA Bragg has spent quite a bit of time trying to shore up potential weaknesses, you point out in your piece today that Trump's lawyers could pursue a sort of, I don't know, is it novel, a different strategy for trying to effectively lower the sentence here by convincing, by going only for a misdemeanor charge here, by effectively admitting guilt to just a misdemeanor to take the felony off the table. Can you explain that theory a little bit more fully?
Yeah, no, it's an unorthodox theory, I'm sure, to most people who are hearing it. But essentially, you know, any time that there is a charged offense that is sort of a high-level felony offense that has a lesser included offense in it, so in this case, the misdemeanor is falsifying business records, and as you said at the top, it has been escalated to a felony through the allegation that the falsification of the records was done to aid or conceal another crime. So what defendants in these kinds of odd situations can do, if they are concerned that the jury may be reluctant to acquit the defendant, but may have some concerns about the strength of the case, they can ask the judge in New York before the case goes to the jury to instruct the jurors that they can convict the defendant on the lesser, in this case, misdemeanor offenses rather than top offenses. And the benefit of doing that for a criminal defendant is to avoid a situation where the jurors are just stuck with the most, the strongest option and are forced to effectively convict on the felony. Forced, I'm just putting that in quotes, that would be the way the defendant would see it. And instead give them sort of a compromise option, which would be misdemeanors in this instance.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.